Good afternoon, everyone. The topic of today's lecture is business and quantum mechanics. Always quantum mechanics. Quantum is a complicated, controversial subject that is difficult to apply in practical life. People read all the experiments. There are many experiments carried out during these 100 years of quantum mechanics, but they are unable to relate the issue of electron behavior to business, sports, health, and their personal lives. The paradigm changes completely if you understand what quantum mechanics is, that is, what the universe is like. When people say that quantum issues do not interfere in the macro world, this is not true. There are microtubules in the brain. Quantum action goes up a level, from systems until it becomes a neuron, and behavior. So, there is a direct connection, an open channel from the atomic and infraatomic world to this reality here, shows the room. In fact, there is an experiment with the chair and the laser. Everyone thinks the chair is still. Theoretically, it is. According to our perception, it is still, but when the experiment was done with a laser pointing at the chair, it was shown that the chair is moving. At least it moves, if I'm not mistaken, by 10 to 16. But it is moving. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is still. Everything vibrates. Everything behaves like a wave and a particle at the same time. It seems simple, it seems understood, equated. The double-slit experiment was performed for the first time 205 years ago, in 1805. When an electron passes through two slits, two holes, at the same time. About 200 years later, it still has not been understood. All of society, all of the current scientific, social, political, economic, religious paradigms, are still stuck in the Middle Ages, at most in Newton's physics. And all of the technology we have shows that quantum mechanics is right. Approximately 90% of the technology that exists and that everyone uses is based on quantum mechanics, such as radio, television, cell phones, subway tickets, free toll passes, GPS, etc. All technology that exists, 90% comes from quantum mechanics. And based on experiments that demonstrate how the world works. So, if quantum mechanics didn't work, your television wouldn't work, nor would your radio, cell phone, etc. Nothing would work. If your cell phone works, it proves that everything is a particle and everything is a wave at the same time. The question remains. I use a cell phone, radio, and television, but I still have the classical physics worldview. That is, the view that everything is separate. The chair is a thing and I am another thing. You are a thing and I am another thing. We are separate. There is no communication at a distance, no action at a distance. And experiments show that there is action at a distance. Einstein spent his life fighting against quantum mechanics. The theory of relativity is a breakthrough, it was a revolution, but it was still a revolution that did not shake the structure, the worldview of the 18th and 19th centuries. It did not shake anything. The fabric of spacetime is like a continuum, as he said, a carpet, a trampoline. You have a planet, a star, and the gravitational attraction curves. It is as if you throw a lead ball on a trampoline, it sinks. In practice, the theory of relativity did not change the worldview, because you bent spacetime. The connection that is being created is from this continuum. It is as if it were a sheet with a ball placed on one end and another in the opposite direction. If you pull one end of the sheet, the other comes with it. So, there is something that connects one thing to the other. Physicists and society could rest assured that there was no such thing as spooky action at a distance. In Einstein's view, there is no field. There is no action at a distance, because gravitational action is not the distance. In Einstein's view, it is the tissue that has been deformed. In 1900, physicist Max Planck showed that everything is a particle and everything is a wave at the same time. This has many implications. Because if everything is a wave and/or a particle, it can be treated as a particle in the case of the chair, the wall, all of this here, he demonstrates the room, or it can be treated as an intangible wave, but as concrete or more so than the material part. The material part is simply a reduction in the frequency of the wave. When the frequency is reduced, it becomes more condensed. The greater the energy, the less mass you have. There will come a time when you have no mass, in the sense that you take what we call matter. There will be a moment when you have no matter, you only have the wave. Imagine if this were accepted by the majority of people. Everything would have to change in this society. Absolutely everything. The implications are total, absolute. It is a completely different worldview, because no one is isolated anymore. At the quantum level, there is no separation of people. There is a single plasma of energy. Therefore, all people are one thing, that is, one wave. Let's start from the top down. There is a body that has kidneys, liver, lungs, heart, etc. Now we choose an organ of this individual and put it under the microscope. We will see cells, go deeper and we will see molecules, go deeper and we have atoms, protons, neutrons and electrons. If we go deeper into the proton, there are quarks. When we look at the quark, we have two options, according to today's physics, the superstring or the Higgs boson. Physicists are looking for it in Geneva. Either way, it will be one of the two. When you observe it, you will see that underneath, there is the quantum vacuum. The quantum vacuum is an ocean of energy. It is a wave that is constantly bubbling. When a part of this wave slows down, because it is a frequency and all waves vibrate, reduces the frequency, this small part of the reduced frequency behaves like a quark, or joins the quarks and behaves like protons or electrons or neutrons and so on. Down there is only one enormous, immense and infinite wave. Everything emerges is a way of speaking, because the whole is inward. They are systems within systems and so on. It is only a level of organization. So, the chair emerges from the quantum vacuum. The air that is here between us is also emerging from the quantum vacuum. I emerged, you emerge, everything that exists on planet Earth, the galaxies, the universe, everything emerges from this quantum vacuum. This is a fact, it is not philosophy. There is an experiment called the Casimir effect. You place two metal plates close together. They are so close that there is nothing between them. Therefore, they should remain still, but they do not remain still, they are attracted. What is attracting the two plates? It is the quantum vacuum. It is called the Casimir effect. Every experiment we can imagine has already been done. Physicists are very curious and invent all kinds of experiments to understand how reality works. Therefore, all of this has already been tested and proven, mathematically, and for this reason, this electronic issue is possible to work. We know exactly how the electron behaves, making it possible to build all of this electronics and chemical manipulation. We know exactly how to join two atoms to form a molecule. Therefore, all the available technology proves that we know, with great proximity and accuracy, how the real world works. The deepest possible world. Obviously, there is much to be discovered, but much has already been discovered. What we know should change everything. Why? Because everything has an electromagnetic field. You have four fundamental forces. Strong force, which joins the proton with the neutron. Weak force, there is an electron around it, and there is an electron with a negative charge. When there is a positive charge in the proton, there is an electromagnetic field. Electromagnetism. Gravity, which permeates all of this. There are four forces, that's all. There is nothing else. There is, but it has not been discovered yet. But, let's stick to what has already been discovered and is making everything work. Everything has an electromagnetic field. It's not just two names, it's a force that has been conventionally called that. Because it sends and returns at the same time. It's not something linear, it's not like you first send and then it returns, it's not like that. And at the same time. Everything you emanate, returns, everything you feel goes and comes back, everything you think goes and then comes back. It's all at the same time. So thoughts and feelings are not abstract things, they are absolutely concrete. They have an atomic basis. Think about it carefully. Everything you feel is composed of atoms. It's a wave. So, your feelings are a wave. Your thoughts are another wave. However, they are at a high speed. What happens if we pass a magnet over the table and there are iron filings there? It attracts the little pieces of iron, within the area of the magnet's field of action. And our thoughts? What's the difference between them and the iron filings? Or from our feelings to iron filings? Is there any difference? There is no difference at all, because everything is a wave. So, you need to remove this thing from the particle and start thinking in a quantum way. Everything is a wave. Forget about this mass, forget about matter. Everything is a wave. So, everything changes. Everything you send, comes back. If it has a negative charge, it attracts another negative charge. If it has a positive charge, it attracts a positive one. This is the case in the business world to make money, like anything else. When you understand this, it becomes simple. If we have a thought of need, we are emitting a certain frequency in hertz of need. All of this can be measured. It emits X hertz, which is equal to the feeling of need. I have a lack of money, a lack of capital, a lack of customers, and so on. Electromagnetic, you send, what comes back? Need comes back. For example, you sent 50 kilohertz, kilohertz. What are you going to capture back? Return 50 kilohertz. If you turn the dial on your radio to 90.5 megahertz, you will hear CBN. It is impossible to hear antenna 94.7 megahertz, if you are tuned to 90.5 megahertz. The element in your radio needs to resonate, in phase, with the CBN wave, or with the radio Banderantes wave, or with any wave. That is why you listen to a certain radio station. Therefore, if we emit any feeling of lack, of need, of difficulty, of anything other than, I have, I am grateful. What will come back? More difficulty will come back, more need will come back, customers will stop coming, etc. So, look at the testimonials from the consultations. I put on the resonance CD and in the first month no customers came into the store, it stopped, and others commented that during this period, it was full of customers. This one who stopped having customers, what is happening to him? The wave came and he maximized the result he has. Remember, with resonance you become empowered, the wave that comes in, empowers. You become more and more powerful. Imagine that you were emanating a low-power wave of need. For example, it's difficult, there's a lot of crisis, no customers come in. But, it was something small. But now you are being monitored with harmonic resonance, you started playing the CD, it is empowered, now it is a huge wave. If you sent it out, it emanated more need, more complaints, more negativity, what comes back? It comes back in the same proportion that you are emanating. So, if you send out more comes back, and no more customers come in. To use a tool like harmonic resonance, the person automatically needs to resolve internal, emotional, philosophical, taboo, prejudice, comfort zone, paradigms, self-sabotage, trauma, and so on. There is no magic. The magic that many people want. That sets the tone and fills the store with customers, that wins cars, apartments, receives court orders, wins lawsuits, and so on. And I remain the same, I don't change anything, regarding thoughts and feelings. That's why it sometimes takes a month, 2 or 3 months, a year, 2 or 3 years to get the results that the person wants. For now, they don't let go of everything that is getting in the way, there's no way to attract it. Do you see? That's the difference, let's say, between black magic and physics. In black magic, you are manipulating an external force, it doesn't depend on you. You don't need to improve, you don't need to have catharsis, you don't need to purify yourself, you don't need to evolve. You don't need anything. This is what happens, for example, and can be seen in advertisements, on posts in cities like Sao Paulo. There must be one all over Brazil and the world. There is a poster stuck on the post that says, Love Binding. We guarantee 100% results. When you work frequently with waves, it is impossible to guarantee 100% of the results. This is where the difference begins. There is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It is not possible to measure the position and momentum of the particle at the same time. You can only know the position or know the speed, the momentum, one thing or the other. You will never be able to determine both. So there is a fundamental uncertainty in the universe. You are never sure of anything, and you never will be. It is impossible to have a 100% guarantee. There is no such thing. It is an external force that will tie and glue two people together. We can buy a rope at a hardware store and use it to tie the two people together. It would be easy. Grab the two people, tie them together, and they will be together. They will start to struggle, or at least one of them. Let's consider that he wanted the tie, for example, and he will be happy to be stuck to the other person. So, one of them went and bought the service and the other is struggling terribly, but is very well tied. It takes a while for her to free herself, but she does free herself, because one of the people does not want that. So, we enter Schrödinger's wave function collapse. Everything we think, create, we collapse the wave function. There is a wave of possibilities all the time moving through the universe. When we look, put our minds to it, focus on it, the wave collapses and it turns into a wave of probabilities. That's why, when we talk about quantum mechanics, we say that there are infinite possibilities. That's why. This wave of possibilities really exists, but it becomes a probability in our lives when we choose. You can have any car, it's a possibility, but only when you decide and specify exactly the car, make, year, and that it becomes a probability of entering your life. Until you choose, you haven't collapsed the wave. So, the person will continue to struggle and will collapse a liberation from it. Sooner or later, they will free themselves. Why won't his plan work? Because he hasn't changed anything within himself or within her, the two haven't changed, they continue to repel each other, they are tied by force. If he had patience and made all the necessary changes, he would get what he wants in a harmonious, peaceful way, which would work for both of them. But for that to happen, he needs to change. He entered the field of physics. He needs to get rid of the traumas, taboos, prejudices, comfort zone, paradigms. He needs to change a series of elements, so that he becomes so good that she wants to live with him, without any need for ties. She will stay with him through magnetic attraction. He was attracted to that person. It is electromagnetic attraction. For this to happen, we need to change his frequency, otherwise he will not attract. He is on the old, bad frequency. He continues to attract negative, limiting situations. This applies to a relationship, as well as to a car, an apartment, jewelry, literally anything, because everything is under what is a wave. Now, you see where we are now. Look back and analyze the world as it is today. Isn't it completely the opposite of that? What are we talking about? Society is set up completely the other way around, in separation. It is necessary to tie things together. It is not set up in a way that I evolve, I attract. I control my thoughts, I control my feelings, I attract the house, the car, the business, the investment, anything through personal electromagnetism. So, in this society, in this Newtonian or Cartesian paradigm, how difficult is it to accept the fact? You don't need to understand that you take an electron and shoot it, and there are two slits in front and it passes through the two slits and generates constructive interference behind it. So, what does it show on the wall back there? A fringe, because wave 1 and wave 2 interfered, the peak of one wave collided with the peak of the other wave, generating constructive interference. That is what appears in the background. All this human misery is the result of our worldview, and that alone. If this changes, everything changes. If your vision changes, everything changes. But the implications are enormous, you come up against pre-established interests. Who wants to change their worldview to achieve general results? No one, no one. Those who have already established themselves and have a territory, a captive market, a trust, a monopoly, a cartel, don't want to know about quantum mechanics. That's why it's so hard to explain and for people to understand something so simple. How difficult it is to accept the fact. You don't need to understand that you take an electron and shoot it, and there are two slits in front of it and it passes through both slits and generates constructive interference behind it. So, what does it show on the wall back there? A fringe, because wave 1 and wave 2 interfered, the peak of one wave collided with the peak of the other wave, generating constructive interference. That's what appears in the background. When you send just one electron, there is no interference, it passes through a slit, for a long time. It shows that it did not interfere with anything, because there is only one slit. But, the moment you open both slits, it immediately shows that there is constructive interference behind it. Now, quantum mechanics is more than that, the simple fact of thinking about detecting the behavior of the electron changes its behavior. Think about it, what does that mean? This experiment was done. There is a machine that will identify where it passes through. It goes through slit 1 or slit 2. So, let's suppose the technicians in the back of the room prepare the machine to detect which slit it will go through. As soon as I decide what I have thought, what does the electron do? It only goes through one. Just the fact that we think about the experiment makes the experiment model itself. The result changes, because the electron changes its behavior, so I think about what I want to do with it. This is quantum mechanics. This is how the universe is. So, the electron knows what I'm thinking of doing with it. It hasn't left the projector yet, it hasn't left, but I know that either I'm going to detect it with two slits or with one slit and it's already behaving before I set up the machine to make the measurement. This is quantum mechanics. And the delayed effect. After it has passed through the slit and we've resolved the measurement, we want to check if it's a wave or a particle. If there's only one slit, it passes as a particle, if there are two, it passes as a wave. I emitted it, it came, it passed, it doesn't matter if it happened once or twice, but it hasn't reached the sensor yet. In this halfway point, I decide whether I want it to be a wave or a particle, but it's already passed. What happens in practice? When I decide and it's here in the middle of the path, when it reaches the sensor, it shows that it behaved as I decided after it passed. It's called the delayed action experiment. After it has already passed through the slit and I decide what I want to do with it. What if it had already passed through as a particle and I decide that I want a wave? But, it has already passed through. And when it passes through as a particle, it passes through as, let's say, mass, but, when the sensor catches it, it behaves as a wave. This can only have one meaning. As soon as I decide, it goes back in time and passes through again, as I want now. There are several experiments of this type of delayed action, carried out by several laboratories. Until the person has decided what he wants to see, or has not seen it, that is, he has not collapsed Schrödinger's wave function, has not observed the result is open to question. Around 1960, an experiment was carried out that, at the time, did not use magnetic files, but rather punched paper tapes, which had punched the 9 holes. They recorded and generated random numbers 010101, that is, they punched holes in the paper tape. The computer program did this, and no one was watching. Theoretically, it will generate 50% of zeros and 50% of ones, that is, 50% of each form, because it makes 010, 101, 0101, it can only show 50% of each. This is punched in the paper tape, so that no one can say that the person altered the recording of the file on the magnetic tape or on the magnetic disk of the HD that is in the computer. So, it is a punched paper tape. The computer punched holes in the tape and no one noticed, that is, no one counted how many zeros and how many ones I have. It is still in potential. We do not know. What experiment was done? At this point, when the tape was already perforated, a decision was made, a member of the audience was called and asked, "Do you want more zeros or more ones?" The tape was perforated on February 20, 2008, and was stored away. No one had looked at the tape, no one knew what was on it. The computer generated 010-101-01001. At this point, it said, "I want more zeros than ones." When the tape was counted, the number of zeros and ones, what was the result? There were 59% zeros. How is that possible? If the tape was already recorded, perforated? That means there is only one conclusion. We decided, now in 2010, that there should be more zeros than ones. So, we went back in time to February 20th, 2008, and at the moment we decided to have more zeros, the tapes were perforated, with a proportion of more zeros. So, we went back in time. There is no past, present, or future. There is no such thing. There are several types of these experiments, some with HD, magnetic file, recorded on a computer, any, and now there is this one with punched tape. You go back in time and arrange it the way you want. Isn't there timeline therapy? It is a neo-linguistic therapy, where you go back and arrange all the trauma and the person sees the mental screens, being rearranged from where you started to mess with the trauma until the present. The person sees this, keeps arranging, and changes their present in a matter of days. Depending on how you mess with the past, everything will change in a matter of days. It could be a week, a month, it depends on what you went back to. You check your trauma, go back a year, 10, 20, 50 years, it doesn't matter how long ago, go back to the origin, to the moment of that trauma and redo your reaction. For example, your father beat you when you were 5 years old and you were left with a huge trauma, you started to hate him and this brought endless consequences to your current life. You are 41 years old. Everything is at a standstill in your current life because of this trauma. You can't solve it. What do? Go back to the day the beating happened. When you are being beaten you change the way you see it, immediately forgive your father and you can go straight back here, to the present. You go back, and what happens? Everything is being fixed, and you will see that in the next days, weeks, maybe months, everything in your life that has any relation to this issue will change. You can do this experiment and you are absolutely certain of the result. This is not psychology, this is physics. It is quantum mechanics. This delayed action experiment shows this. You choose a random number generator, you choose what you want. As long as it has not collapsed. As long as you have not looked, the observer has not chosen, it is potential. This is the famous story of Schrödinger's cat. And an experiment in which the cat is placed in a box, there is an atom vibrating due to atomic decay, it vibrates. Always. It will have a half-life. And when it reaches half-life, a vial of poison is broken, and the cat dies. But you don't know. The atomic decay is there, and the cat is locked in the box. Nobody has done this in practice, it is only mental.